Welcome to Holy Health, the podcast where cutting-edge health insights meet timeless biblical wisdom. Join us as we explore the latest in wellness, fitness, and mental health, all while grounding our journey in the spiritual truths and guidance found in the Torah. Whether you're looking to nourish your body, mind, or soul, we'll help you live a life of balance, vitality, and faith. Tune in to discover how to achieve holistic health through the perfect blend of modern science and ancient wisdom. Let's dive into the fullness of life, body, and spirit together. Hey guys, welcome back to Holy Health. I know it's been a little while. It's probably been 2-3 weeks since I've released an episode. I've kind of been taking it easy this summer, giving myself a break, my editor a break, and just taking a little bit of a break from recording. But now I'm going back to it. This week's episode with Dr. Torkil Faero is an episode that, once again, it's something that was recorded quite a while ago. I apologize to Dr. Faero for taking so long to get this episode out. But I think what we discussed, I think will resonate with you. If you're new to a health journey, if you're new to this podcast, I think that assessing your heart rate is a really good and easy way to get an overall picture of your health. So I think you guys should check out more of Dr. Faero's work, check out his book, The Pulse Cure, and I think you will love it. I hope you'll enjoy this conversation as much as I did. And we were lucky to have Rabbi Danny Yaffe from Australia back with us again this week. Every time we always try to make, our Torah extras around 15 minutes, max 20. It always comes out longer because he has so many interesting things to say. I love whenever I interview someone who is part of Chabad, I always find that the Torah they talk about is just so interesting and coming with a highly spiritual piece as well. So I really loved our conversation. If you are somebody who's interested in being interviewed, if you think you have something that would that our audience could really gain from, please feel free to reach out. And if you're interested in being a Torah extra, also I love having new people on. Everybody who comes on finds their own connection, finds something interesting, and a way to just help us connect, whatever the topic is, to Torah. So I would love to hear from some of you, always looking for new people. And I want to wish you guys a Shabbat Shalom. And as we've been saying for the past nearly 2 years, I hope that this will be the last Shabbat, that our hostages will come home, even before Shabbat, and that our soldiers will come home safe as well. I'm Israel. Hi, everyone. Okay, hello, everyone, and welcome to Holy Health. My guest today is Dr. Torkil Faero. Dr. Faero is a general practitioner and an emergency physician, as well as a document filmmaker, an author, and a photographer. In 1996, he was one of the first Norwegian medics to work for Doctors Without Borders when he worked in war-torn Angola. He's had tens of thousands of patients all over Norway during his 25-year career, and this has allowed him to gain a unique perspective on the various diseases that plague us. He's also an award-winning photographer, author of The Camera Cure, as well as The Pulse Cure, an avid traveler. He's made his way by bicycle, motorbike, kayak, boat, and car through 80 countries. He speaks 8 languages and lives in Oslo with his wife and 2 kids. So
sounds like me, yeah.
Yeah, and thank you. I just want to thank you for joining me. I have put him through the ringer. I canceled on him. Most of you guys know what's going on here in Israel, and I've canceled on him multiple times, and I'm happy that he agreed to come on and do this interview anyways, and I'm really looking forward to hearing about the Pulse Cure and what you found.
Great. Looking forward to tell.
So could you tell me a little bit about how you got into looking at health the way most doctors are not looking at it today, right? Most doctors you have a symptom, let's treat the symptom, and you're looking at a bigger picture and how that we can hopefully actually prevent chronic disease.
Yeah, I came by it by actually reading a book from a doctor. It's called Bessel van der Kolk. He's written the book called The Body Keeps the Score. And he was telling about how they were using heart rate variability, the heart rhythm, to assess the autonomic nervous system of their psychiatric patients. And then I understood that tracking your heart rate variability is such an important metric, not only for psychiatric patients, of course. It has been used a lot on athletes. It has been used a lot in the military to make sure that the soldiers, have an optimal nervous system to do their job. But I understood also that this is important for every one of us because everyone living in this world now, in this modern world, will be too stressed. And we see that around 80% of the diseases that we treat as doctors has a relationship to too much stress, too much chronic inflammation in our systems. That will manifest itself in diseases in all the body's different organs, including the brain. So I just understood that this is such an important metric, and I started using ECG monitors to track my own system for my own sake because of my own interest. And after a couple of years, I also understood that this is the metric that we have in the modern smartwatches and wearables and rings and bracelets and all of these different gadgets that so many of us use. And I started, researching into this and found that there was no book on this subject. And my publisher asked me if I could write the book. So, and the book has just been a huge bestseller in Norway, almost for 2 years now. And it's been translated into 8 languages and is still actually the only guidebook on how to use wearables and heart rate variability and connect it to lifestyle changes.
Okay, wow. So what should you be looking for? Should you just get a smartwatch? I mean, obviously I think you should buy the book probably and read the book, but should
Mhm.
you just what are people looking for when they're tracking their pulse? Are you looking for a change when you eat certain foods? Are you looking for a change obviously when you do different types of exercise?
Yeah. Everything. So everything that will put a demand on your heart will be shown in the heart rate variability. So whether it's exercise, whether it's food, alcohol, different things that you can tolerate in your food, normal mental stress, family life, work stress, everything will be seen, in the stress levels. And we don't really have a good sense of our own stress levels. It has been a sense that hasn't been needed throughout evolutionary history. You either were fleeing from an enemy or an animal, or you were hunting for food, or you were relaxing. So the sense for, and then we didn't need this sense for our own system. In fact, it would have been disturbing the senses to the outward threats that came from the outside. But now the threats comes from the inside. But that is just 50 years old. Our system hasn't caught up. A high blood sugar level leading to diabetes is one of the most dangerous things. But we have no alarm signal to warn us that the blood sugar is way high. Even if your blood sugar is like 25 or so, you wouldn't necessarily know. And in the same way with stress, it's when we feel stressed, it has gone a long way. Then you're really overstressed, and the heart rate will reveal stress, long before you can feel it. But it's still significant because low grade stress over a long time, that is what will create disease. And particularly that we are very poor at recovery. So we're not necessarily overstressed, but we are mainly under recovered. So that is the main problem.
Okay, so let's say that someone puts on a heart rate monitor today to start tracking their heart rate. I mean, couldn't it be that whatever, even when they're at their state of rest, right, that their heart rate's going to be higher or in a stress level? Like, is there an indication of what level people's heart rate should be at for different ages? What's appropriate for somebody? Where do they want to get to? As low as possible or?
They would want a high heart rate variability. So a good heart rate, I must probably explain what heart rate variability is because it's not just a heart rate in itself.
Mhm.
So a good heart rate variability will mean that when you are in the relaxed state, when you breathe in, the heart rate goes up a little bit because there's more oxygen in the lungs and it kind of pushes through a bit more effectively. And when you breathe out and there's less oxygen in the lungs, the heart rate will slow down just a little bit, measured in milliseconds, but it's still palpable. You could feel it if you're really relaxed. Feel this difference, this kind of wavy form of the heart rate. But if you are stressed for whatever reason, then your heart rate will beat very steadily, like a metronome, like a clock. And of course, the wearables can detect this difference. And while you are busy living your life, they will collect the data and see whether your stress levels are sustainable with health, over time. And they will, with artificial intelligence and through all the measurements of millions of people, they will find, the right baseline for you and interpret it so that you don't really have to think about that yourself. Your wearable will tell you whether you have a good stress balance or not, and give you this in both numbers and text also.
Okay, so how do we improve our balance, right? Where should
So we
someone start?
can, yeah, you should start making sure you get enough sleep. So sleep is the key to a good stress balance, that you get those 7 to 8 hours of good restorative sleep, which means that most people will easily find out that then you need to cut alcohol. That's a worse stressor. And you need to cut late night meals. You need to cut out ultra processed food and sugary stuff. And yeah, you need to exercise, because if you haven't been exercising and you have a poor fitness level, everything will take a lot of energy, just daily life, daily living, going shopping or whatever. You don't have kind of a reserve, to in your system. So yeah, that would be some of it. And to get a better heart rate variability, you could, for example, do breath work to breathe slowly, calm yourself down, so that you're not only dependent on outside calm circumstances, but that you can calm yourself down even in the middle of trouble, just like a soldier would. Just like I have to do at the ER, even if it's a dramatic situation, I can't be stressed. If it is dramatic, then I really have to calm down. So, of course, we as doctors and soldiers and all this are trained to calm down so that they're not getting hot-headed and make the wrong decisions. So, and of course, the same would be also in athletes and in sports. So, this is a way to be able to control your autonomic nervous system. And of course, it's like in the car. If you don't have a speedometer, you don't know your speed. You don't know how much is left in the tank. You don't know if your engine is overheating. And until now, we haven't really had a dashboard for our own physiology. But with these numbers, tracking your breath, tracking your heart rate, tracking your temperature, tracking your movement, we have this kind of a dashboard to our own physiology. And that is, of course, so much easier to find the right stress balance, because you would be surprised, because most people will find out, like me, that when I thought I was relaxed, that was nowhere near the truth. So there's kind of a whole new level to get down to the relaxation level that you need to really be restorative. And of course, the more effectively you can do it, the shorter time you need to restore. So if you, for example, thought that watching Netflix and eating a bag of crisps was restorative, you'll quickly find out that that will raise your heart rate and can bring stress way into the night. And yeah, so of course, when you get the speedometer, it's much easier to adapt your speed to the circumstances.
Okay, so I want to break down some of what you said, but I want to start with breathing. So
Hmm?
I'm a physical therapist.
Hmm?
And I teach everyone to breathe, because if you cannot breathe the right way, you also can't stabilize the right way. So I certainly don't find, and I work with a lot of soldiers before the army. I've actually created a course that I've given over to several people before they begin army training, because if you can't breathe the right way, you also can't stabilize the right way. And like you said, to me, breathing is the key. If you can breathe well, you can knock out 80% of the things that are wrong, and the other 20% are very easy to clean up. So when you say breathing, do you teach breathing? In other words, I found that most people get told to breathe, but they don't get shown how to breathe. And that if it's not deep diaphragmatic breathing, you won't get those same effects that you're talking about. That ability to tap into the parasympathetic nervous system, that ability to calm everything down. So I'm just curious to know, is there a method you use to teach people breathing or?
Yeah, I use the most simple one because I'm not trained, especially into breathing. So, and I think the simplest way, the easiest to remember and do is also the most effective for most people. And for me, it's just breathing about 6 breaths a minute and keeping your out breath a bit longer than your in breath. And also use the diaphragmatic breathing to make sure that you're breathing all the way down until to your belly and using your diaphragm to breathe, not just breathe up in your lungs and chest and your ribs. So that's the easiest one. And of course, you can do box breathing. You can do 4-7-8 breathing. So there's a few different methods. There's the Wim Hof method and so on. But I kind of mostly stick to the easiest one that you can do in any situation. Just breathe slowly, a bit longer on the out breath, and also try to find your own coherent breathing because it will be a little bit different. So maybe for some people it's 5.5 breaths per minute, for others 6.5 breaths, and often you can feel it. You can feel, the frequency that feels best for you. So, but it would be for most people be around that. I'm not sure if you agree. You, of
Oh,
course,
no,
know
no.
more than me.
I just love, I was waiting, like it was one of my questions because I didn't necessarily hear that part and I wanted to make sure that that was something that you included. So no, I love that. That was great. So now here's one that, like you said, will just get most people. It doesn't get me because I'm not a drinker. I don't like wine. I don't like beer. I don't like alcohol, but many people do. So can you drink nothing? Is there no amount of alcohol that's okay for people to have? Or,
It depends on the total circumstances, I think. And usually, when I became a doctor 25 years ago, we were recommended to drink 2 units of wine every day for men and one for women. And that is because we have examined the people who lived the longest, and they were often drinking that amount. And what we didn't know then and take into account was the confounding factor that they were less lonely. And people who had good relationships, of course, most of them were drinking together, they would have a better nervous system and feel better. But it was not the alcohol in itself. And according to Whoop, the American manufacturer of the bracelets that will track the autonomic nervous system, when they were asked if they could in their systems find one of their kind of millions of users that could tolerate alcohol without getting stress, they said no. They didn't have anybody who could do that. So alcohol will put stress on your system. And the funny thing is that it's not alcohol in itself, because the alcohol will calm you down. As everybody who drinks knows, it will give you this smooth sensation. You will feel calm. The trouble comes after the enzyme alcohol dehydrogenase will convert it into acetaldehyde, which is very toxic. And your liver and your whole body has to prioritize to get that out of the system before any other task. And this is very stressful and it will be shown in the heart rate. So most people will start to track their system. The first thing they see is the effect of alcohol, which leaves them kind of shocked, really. And I haven't met anyone, I think, to this day that has started tracking their system and have not cut down on alcohol consumption. Not necessarily totally, but they have kind of cut out the unnecessary glasses of wine, the one where you could just as well have a glass of water or tea or coffee or whatever. Um, and they have maybe kept the ones for the celebrations, for the best companies with the best friends and so on. So, and this is also very individual. So the heart rate, these monitors will show you how you react to a certain thing. So if you put 2 glasses of wine in front of 10 people, they will all react a bit differently. Somebody will tolerate it less bad, and somebody very, very bad, but everybody will be stressed by it, after a couple of hours, 2-3 hours. So that's the story on alcohol. And of course, we know that alcohol, after drinking alcohol, it can take 5 days until you
Mm.
get back into the same recovery state.
Mm.
And it's a linear amount for every unit. It's a linear amount upwards to the effect of stress.
Okay, so then let me ask you, what about, today everybody's using marijuana, CBD. What about things like that? Is there any
I'm not so
data on that?
familiar with it. I haven't heard that there's much change, but I haven't really delved much into that either. So I wouldn't really know. But I
Okay.
wouldn't think I wouldn't think it has anywhere near the same effect on the stress level. But I think it has a worse effect on the brain. I just hear Daniel Amen, who does SPECT scans of the brain,
Mm.
saying that the worst brains are the one from cannabis users, or the
Oh,
really worst ones are from schizophrenia. But then the second after that is cannabis users. So it's
wow.
I think it's not good for your brain. And this is also what I see from a lot of people, in my work as a doctor, that using a lot of cannabis is not really helping your brain.
Okay. So let me go to my next favorite one, which is exercise. How
Mm.
much? How often? Isn't some stress to the system from exercise good? Like at a certain point, we want some stress, but maybe not too much stress. Because I
Yes.
have had people on talking about the inflammatory effects of too much exercise, of over
Yeah,
exercising.
so absolutely. So also in exercise, there's kind of a sweet spot. You can overdo it and underdo it, so obviously, like anything else. And a lot of people are actually over exercising. I don't think for the health benefits that it's necessary to exercise more than maybe 3 hours a week. And probably even 1.5 hours would be good enough of moderate exercise. Of course, that won't win you the marathon or win the race, but when it comes to health and longevity, the most important thing is to be in the middle and upwards on the VO2 max.
Hmm.
And like the Garmin watches and many watches will give you an estimate of your VO2 max. If your VO2 max is among the 25% lowest, that's when you are in the zone and risk of getting sick, getting diseases, and getting a shorter life because your cells in your mitochondria are just not optimal. We are not having a system that runs smoothly and works smoothly. So you would get any kind of disease, and I can clearly see that if you for example have to run to get the bus and you run for 3 minutes, I would guess if you are among the 25% of the population who would be exhausted and out of breath and totally exhausted after that, I think you would be in the danger zone of being in that lowest 25% range. But as I said, once you once you get up in the 50%, then you have a 94% chance of being alive 10 years after that. If you are in the 2% range, you will be at the 97% chance of being alive. So it's not so much of a difference whether you are on the 50% or the top two. So the problem is when you get down to the bottom 25, that's when you have kind of a 77% risk of being alive 10 years after. That's when the big step is.
So what do
And
you can?
I also see that if you have a good VO2 max, you can tolerate kind of any stress better. So it's really important to have a good enough VO2 max.
So what do you consider to be moderate exercise? What would bring somebody there? You know what I'm
That would
doing?
be that. Yeah, that would be kind of zone two training. Maybe that you
Okay.
would need to either walk, brisk walking, that you get a bit shorter breath, or that you're jogging really slowly. That should do it. That should be enough. Even more effectively, even if you just have 10 minutes of running, that could be even more. I think it's also important to get your heart rate really up.
Okay.
Not necessarily to the maximum. Say that if you have a maximum heart rate of 180, if you sometimes only for 10 minutes could get it up to 160, I think that is would be brilliant. And
Okay.
you also, of course, you need muscles. You need muscles both for mechanical stability, of course, also into your last decade. If you plan to be strong in the last decade, you have to start the work way before that to make sure that you will. And we also know that there are myokines. that is produced in the muscles. It's kind of a protein reserve that your brain needs. So that having good muscles is very important for your brain.
Okay. So let's go back to sleep, right? You say 7 to 8 hours of restful sleep. How does someone know if their sleep is restful? Or I know a lot of the watches and the trackers will tell you.
Yeah, and that is what they will tell you because you wouldn't necessarily, you're not very good at interpreting our sleep quality. Firstly, it will depend on which sleep phase you're waking up from. So if you wake up and you feel really groggy, it may be that you wake up from a very effective REM sleep, that you have been sleeping very well, but you're waking up from that phase. You feel, like you're sleep inertia, that you could have. And if you wake up from a light sleep, you can feel more awake when you wake up. And the B-type sleepers, they will often feel tired anyway, while the type A people, they would feel awake when they get up. So there are a lot of different ways, and we tend to feel whether we have gone through the sleep phases more than whether we are restored when it comes to the heart rate variability. So I think that most people quickly find out that they can affect their sleep level in ways that they didn't know. So once they get this speedometer just also on the stress, on their daytime stress, they can also see how that daytime stress affects the nighttime restorative quality of sleep. And once you get this possibility to have this window into the system, you can regulate it so much more easily.
Do you have any tips for people getting this really good, restful, restorative sleep?
Yeah, cut alcohol in the evening. Avoid eating later than 3 hours before you go to bed. Calm down the last 1 to 2 hours. You could do either reading or listening to music or dim the lights. And so on. Make sure that your bedroom is cool, 15 to 18 degrees centigrade. I'm not really sure what that would be in Fahrenheit. And that is completely dark. That you shouldn't see a hand in front of you. That's also important. That you kind of mimic the sleep circumstances that we had in Africa all those 100,000 years ago. The more it can look like that, and also that you have a sleep consistency, that you go to bed and wake up more or less the same time every night. Maybe within a half hour difference, that would be good enough. So that's maybe the most important thing you could do.
Do you believe in like the getting like the early morning sunlight to help regulate circadian rhythm as well, things like that, and maybe using red light later at night, or is that
Yes,
something you talked
absolutely.
about?
Absolutely. So to set the circadian rhythm with light early in the morning, that will make sure that melatonin will be released 12 hours after that, so that you'll get into a good rhythm. Yeah.
Okay, beautiful. Okay, now the hardest and my least favorite. Hit me up with the food. When you talk about, right,
Yeah.
different foods affecting us.
Yeah.
I mean,
So
I know what you're talking about, but do you also believe in fasting? Like, are there other things that come along with it? Like, what's your...
yeah, absolutely. Fasting is good. And also the good thing about it is that it's visible in the heart rate. And that makes it so much more motivating to do the fasting when you see the result in real time. It's not just that you're guessing or maybe feeling better. It's not so easy to feel that, but you could see from the numbers that it's good for your heart rate variability and stress level. And that could be done both by like normal standard fasting, but also having a restricted feeding window of maybe 8 to 10 hours is also good to make sure that your digestional system gets its night fast. And to extend that, so many people eat from they wake up until they go to bed. And they're even told to do that, until recently by the doctors that eat often and small meals often throughout the day, and that's a terrible advice. And so most people quickly find out that if they restrict their eating windows to maybe 8 hours, it will depend. For some, particularly some women, it's a too short a window.
That's
but somewhere between 8 and 10 is ideal for most people. And of course, also that you can see it on the heart rate monitor is also motivating, as I said. So, and also, of course, try to stay away from processed food, and particularly the ultra processed food that the engineers have made to make you addicted to it, to give you a dopamine kick, to have this mix of salt and fat and carbohydrate, fast carbohydrate. It's really speeds your dopamine kick, that seems to be the worst for the stress system.
I was going to ask you about the difference between fasting and with women, and also, do you see a change in heart rate variability, let's say with women going through perimenopause or menopause? Like, is that something that you would see a variability in heart rate with that, something like that?
Yeah, I haven't really delved into that, but I see that a lot of women of that age find even more interest and effect from fasting. And of course, this is Mindy Peltz's
Mm-hmm.
area. She has written Fast Like a
Yeah.
Girl. Maybe if you're interested in that, then
Yeah.
then check out the podcast with her. But
Yeah.
understand that it's particularly good for menopausal, perimenopausal, postmenopausal women to do fasting.
Okay, and let me ask you, so in terms of the devices that we can use to start monitoring heart rate, is there something that you recommend more than others? Is there a device that's preferable?
There's a gold standard that is at the time being is by far the best option. That is the Garmin watches.
Okay.
And they're also the cheapest ones, or they will
Hmm.
their range would be very accessible, probably like $140 for the cheapest, and then upwards, of course, to the really advanced athletes watches that could cost you 10 times that amount. But somewhere in the middle there for a watch, maybe $400, $300, you should find a really good one that would have heart rate variability over time. That is the most important thing. So that's the best option. So you also have the Aura Ring, you have the Whoop Band, and most smartwatches, including the Apple Watch, will give you some insights into the systems, but maybe not as accurate as the Garmin's. But that depends whether you want to micromanage. So what I've been talking about, that is kind of a micromanaging your stress levels. To find out that, oh, it was between 1 o'clock and 3 o'clock that the stress level was high. So it must have been what I ate at lunch. And for that, you would need a Garmin, because most of the other ones will track your heart rate variability at night, and will not be able to detect and show you that in the same way that the Garmin will. So,
Okay. And so here's a question. What about the fact that all of these smartwatches and things like that emit EMFs? And what about the dangers of the exposure to EMFs? Do you feel
I would
like it's not worth the...
I don't think in the kind of storm of different EMFs. I'm not so I don't know so much about how that would affect, but I would assume that of everything that surrounds us, this would be a very small drop in the water. But even though most of these devices will have kind of a flight mode, so that they would collect the data, and you wouldn't necessarily need it to be transferred to your phone all the time. So you could put it in the flight mode, and then at some point take it out of the flight mode
Hmm,
and just sync your
that's
phone.
great.
And if you want to, you could go out of the room and then just pick it up and put it in flight mode again. So that shouldn't be a problem. And other than that, they are just putting light, in they're sending light waves to monitor. So that should not be any problem.
Okay, great. So let me ask you, this everything you've said is really fascinating, and I think that people should get the book. And I think that, I'm a big believer in knowledge is power, and the more we know about our own systems, the better, because really ultimately we're responsible for ourselves. So I really love this. I love, you giving people back the power to be able to monitor their own systems,
Yeah.
I think is just so incredible.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a major shift from having the power of your health left to the doctor and the healthcare system and taking it literally into your own hands. And so it's a huge step. It's a huge game changer in health.
So let me ask you on a different note now, because this is where I go. What does spirituality mean to you? And do you think having a sense of spirituality might actually help people lower their heart rate?
Yeah, spirituality for me would be the awareness of our place in the world, like in the cosmos, that we're just a tiny, tiny world. And under different circumstances, for example, under different gravitation forces, if you are in a black hole, the whole Earth would be the size of a peanut. And and to see that, and it's a 15 billion years old universe we're in, and we have this extremely small time slot that we can walk the Earth, and that each of us are the results of an unbroken line of reproduction back to the very first life. If anything of all these, for millions of years would have broken that line, we wouldn't be born. So I think just the awareness of where we are, um, and the connection between us and nature. I think that's spirituality for me, and to use our brains that we still don't know what is. What is consciousness? What are we doing? How does thing work? Why do we exist? And that is spirituality for me, and being curious about the answers to these things, I think. And then, of course, there are a lot of religions, throughout history trying to find and produce the answers to that. And for me also, if it's coupled to religions, if there's something in common with the religions, it's probably good. You know,
Right.
if there's fasting, pilgrimages, resting days, praying, giving thanks, paying, 10% or whatever it's called. There's a name for it. I'm not sure what it
Charity.
is. Charity,
Yeah.
and being together, gathering, dancing, having rituals, you know, trusting that there's something bigger than you. All of this seems to be helpful, regardless of the different faith, I would say. So that would be spirituality for me. You had some other questions too, but I don't remember what that was.
No, it was you answered it.
Or
It
it
was
was that. Okay.
yeah, how did that tie in? And the fact if people have a spiritual practice, that should be able to help ground them and help lower, you know what I mean,
Yeah,
their
it it
heart rate
it, it makes
variability and
it because it makes them
improve it.
feel safer. It makes them feel safer. It makes them feel that somebody's watching over you,
Mhm.
and that would provide a sense of safety. And when you feel safer, your nervous system is in a better shape, and your body will be better. So, research shows that those who have a religion will be healthier and live longer than other people. So it must be a reason that every society has had a religion. So there must be some benefit.
Well, I think that's great. And I just want to thank you so much. And thank you so much for having patience with me and agreeing to come on. I really appreciate it. This was so great.
Yeah, thank you for having me on your show.
Thank you so much. I really
Yeah, thank
appreciate
you.
it.
And yeah, and of course, for people, of course, they can buy the book, but they can also buy the Audible. Many people who listen to podcasts like to listen to books, so just that it also exists. So
That reminds me, where's the best place for people to find you?
Amazon or on Instagram, Dr. Torkil, or yeah,
Well, I'm
you'll
gonna
find
make
it
sure
in
I
any
I go
online.
follow you right now. I'm gonna do that from
Mm, mm,
my accounts. So
mm,
perfect. And I'll include everything in the show notes as well, so people can just
mm.
click.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Have a
you
nice
so
evening.
much. Have a great night. Thank you so much. Hey everyone, and welcome back to Holy Health. I have a repeat guest with me today. He's been with us a couple of times before. I have Rabbi Danny Yaffe from Australia. So Rabbi Yaffe is, together with his wife, are co-directors of CBD Chabad in Sydney. Chabad of the City, an inner east in Sydney, Australia, serving locals, professionals, and international visitors with any Jewish requirements that may come up throughout the year. Rabbi Danny has been a fitness enthusiast since he was young, but took it to the next level when he attained his accreditation as a personal trainer in 2013. Although he doesn't train anyone, he's always happy to give guidance, be it in physical health or spiritual health, because both are important. He took on the social media name Warrior Rabbi about 7 years ago in a nod to the conflict between the physical and spiritual, especially as a religious Jew, and how to find the balance between them, not through compromise, but through complementation. Warrior Rabbi's logo of a rabbi doing curls in front of what appears to be a sefer reflects this, but is also using the Chabad approach of Na'afochu, taking evil and making it positive, a response to one of his gym pictures being picked up virally and disgusting anti-Semitic comments being posted underneath. As opposed to being hurt, Rabbi Danny used it as the basis of his social media account with the aim of inspiring people to find that balance between leading a holy spiritual life and with a physically healthy chariot. And I'm so happy to have him back with us today. And social media is actually the way we met. Somehow one of us came across the other person's page and we were in contact that way. I loved the name of his Instagram, Warrior Rabbi, and I'm happy to have him back here with us today. So welcome.
Thank you, Dara, and it's nice to be back. It's been a while, so I appreciate the invite, and hopefully I'm able to deliver the subject matter appropriately. I actually went through a slight brand change with the account, so now I'm a lot more focused on the same concepts, but a lot more focused on the Jewish community strengthening ourselves, especially in times that we're in at the moment. Developing our spiritual strength, but also our physical strength. And it's a lot more focused on promoting others and those around us who pursue such a lifestyle in the hope that this will in turn inspire others as well. So that's very much a slight change, or more of a dramatic change actually than I've done in the past. But yeah, I actually have no recollection of how we met, but it was definitely when we both ended up.
Yeah, and I love that because what you're rebranding as is exactly what I believe in terms of holy health, right? You need the physical, you need to be physically healthy, but you need to be spiritually healthy as well. So that fits right in. I do remember, right? Maybe you came across I don't remember, but I know it was through Instagram and I just loved your name and I loved your content. And so excited to have you back with us again. And you're always welcome.
Thank you.
So, the Pulse Cure, what'd you think of it?
All right. So, first of all, as I did last time, I just want to give, first of all, the Chayalim, the soldiers, a bracha, a blessing that all of them should return, all those who are able to return safely to their families, and that the borders of Eretz HaKodesh, of Eretz Yisrael, continue to be guarded and safe, and more importantly, or just as importantly, that the hostages and the shavuim, the chatufim, should immediately be returned with no sacrifice to the Klal Yisrael, to the Jewish people, and all our neighbors who want to live side by side in peace should be able to do so, and those who are struggling to do so should find truth in their hearts to be able to find a way to live in peace. So I just want to start finishing off with that, L'chaim.
Amen.
It's just water, not alcohol. One of the elements that one of the comments that Dr. Faero said was that alcohol is not particularly good for your not particularly good for the toxins of your liver and your kidney. As a Chabad rabbi, it's a bit of a struggle for me, but L'chaim, nonetheless, it's just water. Don't worry.
Yeah, luckily I don't like to drink too much, so for me that isn't an issue. There's other things that are issues, but drinking isn't hard.
All good. So, how do you want me to start? Do you just want me to begin?
Yeah, let me know what did you think? Tell me what you thought. You have a
All right, so I'll share with you some of my points I wrote down, and feel free to interrupt or ask. Yeah, so I think to start with, we got to start with a simple truth, right? The beating of your heart is not just a biological concept. The very fact that one has a heartbeat, the fact that every single day you wake up with a beating heart, shows that there is a spiritual validation of your purpose in life. Hasidus, which is obviously the primary ideology that I follow, teaches that everything in this physical world is a mirror image of the spiritual world. The Zohar says very clearly that the body is a reflection of the soul. And the Baal Shem Tov continues by teaching us that everything you see around you is an opportunity and an experience and a way to learn how to develop your relationship with God. And therefore, nothing is just random or coincidental, not even the rhythm of your pulse, right? So before I get right into my notes and the points, I think it's important to explain the difference between Kabbalah and Chassidus very, very briefly. If you can imagine the map, the creation around us, the cosmos, the spiritual elements, Kabbalah is the map. If you want to imagine a scenery or a horizon in front of us, Kabbalah is the topological view, the bird's eye view we get of that particular geographical location. Kabbalah will tell you where the mountain is, but what Hasidus does, it brings it to life. It's a emotional and psychological wiring of the Torah, and it takes a mystical structure and basically says to the learner of Hasidus, you're learning Kabbalah, you're learning mysticism, it's abstract, it's beautiful, but it's still distant. So how can you take the Kabbalah and apply it to your life? How can you take this mountain that you know where it is and actually adapt it? And Hasidus effectively helps you, as opposed to looking down on the mountain, literally helps you walk the terrain of that mountain and explore it inch by inch. So that's the difference between Kabbalah and Hasidus. So the reason why I brought that up is because it really helps us understand what the subject matter of what Dr. Faero was speaking about and how to apply it from a spiritual point of view. This concept of heart rate variability, the HRV. Okay, so what he explains in one of the elements he explains in his research is that a healthy heart is not he used the word metronomic. It's not meant to beat consistently. A healthy heart reacts according to various forms of stress. When you're more stressed, it speeds up. When you're less stressed, it slows down. And depending upon the type of stress you have, is what will leak effectively the stresses and the toxins. Sorry, not the stresses. Depending on the negative stresses, it leaks the toxins into your body, right? Mm-hmm. And that in turn leads on to particular forms of disease in the long run. Mm-hmm. So the real challenge and the whole point of what HRV, right, heart rate variability, is effectively teaching us is how to avoid getting ill. And that is how to have a healthy heartbeat, and in turn have how the healthy heartbeat can react according to various stresses on external factor all around you, right?
Right.
That's the scientific principle. And Hasidus has a very similar principle. The reality is Hasidus is based upon Kabbalah, which is over 1,000 years old, or 2,000 years old at least, what we understand of where Kabbalah, the origins of Kabbalah. And the concept of this beat, the pattern of the heart rate is very much mirrors the concept of what's called rotz v'shuv, running and returning, the movement. The Tanya describes that the soul, the internal element of who we are, of our identity, is like a flame. It flickers upwards, it goes down, it's continuously moving, trying to move away from the wick, but they're all at the same time, it's always attached and returning back to the wick. If you look at a flame, it's always flickering up and down, even a fire. Mm-hmm. It has this motion of going up and down, to and fro. And effectively that flickering is what life is all about. It's the symbiotic, it's the, not symbiotic, it's the hypnosis, it's the, what's the word? It's the summary of what life is. Right? Okay. So if you have too much rotzo, if you have too much movement trying to move away from your source or continuously moving, you have some people who are always running around and always doing things for other people, or even being active themselves. One of the things that Dr. Faero said is that when you exercise too much, or certain elements of exercise, it's too much. Because what happens is you begin to burn out, both physically and spiritually. And opposite that, you also have the concept of shuv. If a person is stagnant, if a person always likes to, just be in the moment, you also don't develop, you don't grow, and you don't have this passion, this attraction, and this flickering of life. And therefore, the heart, just like the soul, is only healthiest when it's moving, when it's reacting, when it's going up and down and reacting according to the external stresses. So too, the soul is healthiest when it has the same type of movement. If the same type of rots of a shov, this back and forth, the ups and the inspiration of Yiddishkeit, the inspirations, the passions of life are great, as long as you're able to bring them down into practicality, bring them down into affecting the world around you, and vice versa, and the exact opposite way. If you are always just centered on being a pragmatist, you're always centered on what do I need to do now, without looking to grow, without looking further, the soul also becomes stagnant. So that's what Hasidus explains about this concept of rotz of Shuv, the ebb and flow of life. But let's take a step further and let's make it very, very practical. The reality is I'm not even going to bring up Israel because I can't imagine what people go through there. No, I'm about to talk about stress levels, and while I was writing this, I was like, I'm about to talk to an Israeli living in Israel about my stress levels living in Sydney, Australia. Is on borderline a joke.
No, but honestly, I'm a really good breather, and when I read the news about what's going on in Australia, to me that's so much more stressful. I feel like we know who our enemies are here. Like you don't necessarily recognize your enemies there. I think I don't know.
The media does what the media does best.
Right.
Create fear, spread division.
100%.
The reality is, and I'm certainly not saying that, not diminishing the fear of those who fear or those who have anxiety, but I walk around with my kapata, my black hat, beard through most of the areas in Sydney, and nothing, or very, very little by way of fear,
I think it's
anxiety.
Melbourne. Melbourne might be the problem. No,
Melbourne, we've had lots of, I think it's a bit worse over there. I think we've got a few things happening next week which are scaring a lot of people. Some protests that are being planned, but at the end of the day, we all have anxiety and stress in our lives, and I think that's the reality. And for everyone, they have different levels of coping mechanisms and different parameters and standards of what they can cope with. So if we take the concept of stress, or we take the concept, and I don't mean good stress, I don't mean like training or working out or adrenaline. I'm talking about fear. I'm talking about challenges, bad news, the negative stress.
Right.
If you think for a moment about what actually happens at that moment, the physiological effect on the body, you've got your heart rate increases, your breath shortens, your muscles tighten up, you have a pain in your chest, pain or a tightening in your chest. Effectively, you go into survival mode, fight or flight, right? And one of the first things you think in your head is, I'm on my own. How will I manage? Who can I talk to? And Hasidus tells us very clearly, you're not alone. You're never, ever alone. Shara B'Tochen is a beautiful book, and if I ever, it's written now in English. Initially it was in Hebrew. It's now in English, very, very expanded with a lot of footnotes. If any of your listeners ever have a moment, well, more than a moment, but if they ever want an amazing book that helps with faith, with trust, I will tell them the first book to ever read is Shara B'Tochen, written 1,000 years ago by Rabbi Bachayai. It's now been expanded on in English. If you don't have time to read it, and this is not a free shout out for anyone, but Rabbi Shais Taub has an incredible podcast on Spotify.
Okay.
He's not paying me for that. Just it's tremendous to listen to it if you're able to, if that's your style of learning. And Shara B'Tochen says something very clearly. One who trusts in Hashem has a heart that is calm and a mind that is untroubled by the world. The world
I believe
itself.
that.
Sorry?
I believe that. I think that's why I'm calm in the face of anxiety, honestly. Like because I tell people all the time, like even way pre-war, I remember I don't know, 8 years ago, they were throwing rocks on the road between Efrat and maybe there was shooting. And I remember people discussing on our community-wide chat, should I go to Jerusalem? Should I stay home? And I remember saying, What are you talking about? Like, I'm not suggesting you go to Hebron and go shopping in the Arab Shuk today, but you're talking about we live in Efrat, you have to get to Jerusalem. You cannot stay home and think that you're safe. Like, everything that happens is up to Hashem. If it's your time, it's your time. Again, I'm not suggesting putting yourself in real danger. Don't go to Hebron, maybe, like, and walk down the street. But to think that you have to stay home because if you stay home, you're going to be safe. Like, I believe that I really honestly do believe that Hashem is in charge. And I really do believe that, along with breathing, is what keeps me from having less anxiety.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's effective. I'm going to take that point and I'm going to push it even more.
Okay.
So the reality is that the news, the external cause of the fear has not changed.
Okay.
The news is still bad. The scenario you're still in is a problem. Okay? But the difference is you're no longer alone. Nothing has actually changed. You haven't made a move yet. We're talking about before the action. We're talking about the first stage. In that moment that you are having that panic, let's call it a panic attack, because effectively that's what it is. Your body's going into fight or flight. At that moment in time when you feel, hang on, I'm alone, Chassidus and Sha'ar B'tochen says, no, you're not. You're not alone, because trust in Hashem. And it goes another step further. Thank God our Torah is full, the Torah is filled with a lot of mantras, with a lot of pesukim and verses. And there's two that I want to share which are very, very powerful, which are incredibly well known. Most people say them, most Jews say it every single day. But unfortunately, sometimes we say it as part of without really thinking about it. But the most powerful prayer that we have in Judaism is Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. Okay? Normally, it's a prayer that's said not in the best of times. Okay? For obvious reasons. But if you actually think about what this prayer means, you can realize that this is actually what's called a psycho-spiritual medicine. It's a very, very powerful anchor. Right? This is where we're entering into the ideas of hispoidnus and hispoidedus meditation, practical application of the meditation, of which I'm not against, except meditation has to be put into action. It has to lead you to practical action. So the concept of Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, right? When you say Shema Yisrael, you're effectively saying, we as Jews, right? Listen at this moment in time that you're going in your panic, that you're struggling in the particular moment. Listen, Yisrael, we have Hashem. We have Elokeinu. The very word Elokeinu means our God. Not just that God is above us or God tends to hang around. No, he's literally our God. He's part of who we are. We are part of an extension, an expression of that spiritual infinite entity. And in turn, God is therefore part of us. So yes, the situation you're in right now, it's painful. It's a challenge. You might not even understand at that very moment in time the way out of it. But at that very moment in time, that is the design. That is the design that is meant to be happening right now. So that's that. So I'm going to share the two verses with you, and then I'll share the I guess what I'd like to call the exercise.
Okay.
The second blessing we have, so that's Shema Yisrael, right? There's many meanings to Shema Yisrael, but for the sake of this particular presentation, or what I'm trying to share is this is one of the meanings of Shema Yisrael, acknowledgement that we are not alone, ever. The second one is in the morning blessing that we say every single morning. She'asa li kol sarchi. God has already provided me with everything I need. You start your day, you may not be able to pay rent, you might not be able to put food on the table, the daily challenges may be overwhelming. She'asa li kol sarchi. Hashem, in his strangest, unusual, most wonderful way, has already provided the path for it to work out. Again, it's not about you seeing the end game. It's not about you knowing what the actual plan is. The first stage is about accepting that there is a plan. There is a reason. There is a purpose. How it will work out isn't for you to control. It's not for you to suddenly know every single detail and suddenly start debating, well, is that the best way? No. The reality is, you are a pawn in a very, very big game that's been going on since the beginning of the creation of our reality. Not a game, but the creation of you're a single cog in a endless, infinite mechanism, and you have your pathway. Our challenge as humans is that in those moments of panic, we struggle to move past not knowing what that pathway is. So these two verses indicate very clearly the concept of trust. Okay?
Okay.
And therefore, the exercise is effectively like this, taking the concepts of Rotz V'Shuv, of the heartbeat,
Okay.
of this idea of the flame, and the concept of these two blessings. There's a very effective exercise you can do. And I like to share the origin of effectively of where this comes from. I'm sure there's many sources for this exercise, but I experienced a situation which was I guess you could say was quite serious. I left Australia to go to New York, and for various reasons, I don't have an Australian passport. Primarily because I'm lazy. I'm being honest.
That's okay.
I don't have an Australian passport. There's a lot of paperwork to do. I left on my English passport. I'm English, and I left Australia, which I'm a citizen of.
Right.
So when I left, they basically said to me, I got flagged when I left, and they pulled me over. They said, your visa's expired. I said, I'm a citizen. They checked me out. They realized I was. They're like, okay, great. When you come back in, you might have a problem. Just notify customs. It's like, fine, no worries. Came to check in on the way back. I was very early for my flight from America back to Australia, and they won't let me check in. And I said, what do you mean? They said, you don't have a visa to enter Australia. I said, I'm a citizen there. They said, you may be a citizen, but on an English passport, you need a visa. You don't have a visa. By this point, the line had been an hour and a half long. It's an international flight. I have to check in a certain amount of time. They said, you've got 45 minutes to get your visa. I went into full-blown panic mode. I literally had in the airport. I started having a panic attack. I was physically was struggling to see. Like it started going dark in front of my eyes. I had no way. I wasn't out of money, but the Australian dollar compared to the American dollar wasn't like, oh yeah, I'll just go to a hotel and spend the night here and figure something out. I needed to get home. I have a wife and 6 kids. I didn't know what to do. So I suddenly realized, and I literally put this into motion, put this into practice. I stopped my thought process. I stopped thinking, hang on a minute. Right now, I need to be calm. So what did I do? I began to listen to my heart. My heart was racing.
Wow.
So I began to listen to my heart, and you can either listen to your heart or you can put your hand on your heart, and you begin to pay attention to the heart rate. Right? And first what you do is you breathe in. Classically, we know that the more oxygen your heart gets, the heart rate begins to go slower. The beats begin to slow down. So you begin to breathe in and out, in and out. And I began to think there's different ways to do it. But the way that I'm passing on in this presentation is effectively you go, Hashem Elokeinu, as you breathe in, Hashem is with me. Hashem is not leaving me alone, right? Then, as you breathe out, you say, or you think, Hashem Echad, Hashem's one. As in, everything that's going on around me right now, this is part of the plan. Right. This is not the environment, the scenario that I'm in right now, this moment of panic, this is literally part of the plan. So why am I panicking? What's the point of panicking? This is part of the plan. This is what I need to do. This is why I am here. Let me deal with the problem one by one, bit by bit. And then you breathe in again and you do the process over and over and over. And you can do it 3-4 times, but the idea is that with every inhale and exhale, which has a physiological effect on the heart, your heart begins to slow down. Right. You effectively solidify the concept that this is the plan, this is the situation, this is the scenario that I'm in. And right. if you look at it as a flow chart, you've got the problem, you've got the scenario, that the external factor that's causing you the panic. The first thing you think about is, can I control it? No, I can't control it. Okay, so why are you panicking? Right. Let the pieces fall wherever they may go. Yes, I can control it. Okay, how can you control it? By doing X, Y, and Z. Why you're not doing X, Y, and Z? Do it. Or Whatever the reason is you cannot deal with it, work out. If you can control, good. If you can't control, move on. Let the pieces fall. And realize that this is simply part of this is simply part of why you're here. The reality is, and this brings us back to the very beginning, is the fact that you have a beating heart. The fact that you woke up that morning means God needs you there. That it's essential that you're there. It's essential that you are there at that moment in time. How you got there, why you got there, what's the difference? The fact is you're there. The fact is that at that moment in time, that is the place you're meant to be. So deal with the environment that you're in at that moment. Right?
Yes,
Sorry?
No, I was just going to say, I love that. And it's like I'm listening to myself talk. I love that.
When you started talking earlier, I was like, no, stop.
But wait, I need to know, did you get your visa? I need the end of the story.
Oh, yeah, I almost forgot that. So, yeah, actually, I got the visa in about 4 or 5 minutes.
Oh, okay, fine.
By the time I logged out, so I put the application in, everything went through. By the time I logged out of the application process, I received the visa approval before I had received the receipt for the payment.
Oh, wow.
And
Because
so when I went
to say, if you're British, it's not an automatic visa.
I've got no idea.
Oh, okay.
I have not left Australia since 2019.
Oh, okay.
So
oh, wow.
Maybe things have changed. So even when I went to the check-in counter, she said the lady said to me, she was like, "Where are we up to?" I said, "It's done." She's like, "It's not possible." I said, "No, it's done." She was like, "Let me have a look. Let me have a look." It hadn't even yet updated on their system.
Oh, wow.
We had to wait another 10 minutes. So
Right.
I had it on my system that I had approval, and they were like, they had to call someone from the top who came in, access through one of the customs areas through the back in their computer system, and he saw it had just been approved like 6-7 minutes after me.
Wow.
So anyway, so the in summary, effectively, the way Hashem has created the world in every element, wherever we look, on a macro level, the sun rises, the sun sets, the wind blows. The wind blows this way, that way. Plants grow, plants, die, I guess. Humans, we are born, we die. We have desires, the desires diminish. Our heart beats, our blood goes into our hearts, the blood comes out of our hearts, as in the beating process. Everything is a hypnosis of the concept of Rotz of Ashuv, of thrusting forward, of returning, and of just a flickering candle that's not human based. It's not a life, but we see the candle itself. That's why the expression of Ner Nishma Sodom, that candle is the soul of a person. It symbolizes the who we are as an individual, that we are continuously trying to move. We are continuously trying to move back and forth to achieve greater things, taking a step back, and that is a very small coping mechanism or stress coping teacher. It's a very small lesson in how to deal with our stresses and how to deal with the challenges that we face. For some people, with the expression small toys for little problems for little kids, big problems for big kids.
Right.
We all have challenges in our lives, and we all have those panic-inducing moments. Some in our eyes may be more serious, but for us as individuals, we viewing our own lives see those challenges as the challenge that we have to deal with. And the whole concept, the whole idea of tapping into your heart rate, of using your heart rate as a anchoring system, as long as it's not racing to 170 beats a minute. But if you're able to lower your heart rate and really focus on why we have a heart, why we have life, what is our purpose? And our purpose is Rotzo V'Shuv. Our purpose is wherever you are right now. If you are Rotzo, if you're having to move, if you're dynamic, if you're passionate, if you're engaged, then that is your purpose. It's not about running after something else. It's about running forward and engaging with everything that is around you. And V'Shuv, come back. Bring it back to reality. Bring it back to your home environment, who you are as an individual, developing your own value systems and your own identity, and recognizing that Hashem Echad, that at the end of the day, we are part of Hashem. Hashem is part of us. Not that we are something as a separate identity, but rather we are all one. And it is, I'll finish my sentence and then go back to what I was going to say. Hashem is part of us, we are part of Hashem, and it is all effectively just one flickering candle that is continuously moving. Yes, in the moment it's very hard. In that moment of panic, in that moment of stress, oh, did that just turn off? No.
No.
In that moment of stress, 100% is very, very hard. And that's why we have, thank God, the Torah, these two verses that I've shared, Shema Yisrael and Sha'asni Karsarchi, they are anchor points where at that moment in time, stop for a minute, have the Vashuv, have the not the stagnation, have the sitting down, whatever it is, however you want to physically do it, but stop for a moment and think and breathe and bring it home. Tap into your own purpose, your own validation, who you are, your own identity, and think about that moment in time, that purpose, that fact that you're there, the fact that you've been created, and that hopefully, obviously, there's no guarantee. Everyone has their own levels of panic, so to speak. But hopefully, this presentation will help those who are listening to perhaps in certain times of panic, certain times of not coping, to perhaps cope a bit better. So that was my lesson that I learned from Dr. Faero. One of the spiritual lessons I learned from Dr. Faero's presentation, and I thought I'd share with you.
That was wonderful. Thank you so much. I really love the way you tied that. It fits so perfectly. And I really, really enjoyed that. Thank you so much. We even went on longer than our usual Torah extras, but that's okay. I think this was really, really interesting, and I'm sure that everybody got a lot out of it. This podcast is for informational purposes only. Please seek guidance from a trusted healthcare professional. By listening to this podcast, you release Holy Health and all of its guests from all liability. I'd like to thank Yakir Abelo for editing this podcast.